Last week we talked about one-on-ones from the context of the manager. This week I want to talk about one-on-ones from the context of the team member. That is, every week you have 30 minutes on your calendar or maybe an hour on your calendar with your boss. What are you going to fill that time with, and how are you going to make the best use of that time? These are some of the things that I do and some of the things that I've developed over the years that have served me well, as well as some of the missteps that I've had. Let's talk about how to make your one-on-ones better. Last time I made the division between the responsibilities of a one-on-one. The manager is responsible for the meeting happening and for taking the meeting seriously and for establishing it as an important ritual. The direct report is responsible for filling the meeting with an agenda that is meaningful for you and your manager, and for making good use of the time that your manager has allotted for this meeting. Early on in my managerial career, I didn't internalize properly that the meeting was my meeting and what that meant. And I think that led to many really bad one-on-ones with managers I had at the time, because I would show up to the one-on-one having no real agenda, expecting them to have a ton of things for me to do and really having them grill me about things. And I thought of the relationship established in the one-on-one much more as a relationship, say, between a manager and a subordinate in a classical hierarchy than I think how most tech companies are run, which is you're the subject matter expert, the manager is somebody helping you, but you're going to know your space better than they do, and so a lot of the onus is going to be on you for making sure that you get the best out of your boss in that interaction. I recall fondly actually having a coaching session with a peer of mine who was considerably more senior, was giving me advice about how to work with our shared boss. And he told me that he spends 20 minutes ahead of every meeting just sitting down and writing an agenda and thinking through what he wants to talk about, and oftentimes emailing that the night before to make sure the one-on-one is well prepared. And I thought, what an overachiever. Why in God's name do I need to do that? And yet I find myself now probably spending upwards of 15 to 30 minutes ahead of every one-on-one collecting my thoughts, doing information gathering, and making sure that I use the time in the best way possible. What led me to this shift in mentality is understanding that if I use this meeting correctly, if I get the best out of it, I can make sure that my organization runs much smoother and I can do better for my teams. I can also make sure that my boss understands what's going on, what's working well and what isn't, and that they have an accurate point of view of what's happening in my team. And I believe that that's crucial for making sure that we can smooth over roadblocks, that we can set expectations appropriately, and that I can get the best out of what my boss is actually good at, versus haphazardly stumbling through a conversation that doesn't really bring a ton of value to either of us. But like I said, it took me about 7 years to get to that point. My first tip then is just sit down and write an agenda. Think through the topics that you want to talk about. The way that I do it is that I put stuff in my agenda document with my boss throughout the week as I figure out things that I need to talk about. Maybe things that surface in one-on-ones with my team members, maybe things that I stumble upon in meetings, conversations, emails, reading dashboards, using the product, what have you. And I just jot it down in the document. And then before the one-on-one, I sit down and I cull it and sort it and order it and try to figure out what I want to get out of each topic. Which really brings us to point 2. Make sure that you have clarity in your own head about what you want from each of these topics. Are you sharing information? Is this a topic where you need a decision to be made? Or is it a topic where you want to engage in coaching or problem solving together with your manager? Or maybe is this just a topic where you need to vent and rant? And point 3 is extra important to put some emphasis on, I think. I have found some of the most use that I've had from very good one-on-ones is where I have some space to vent. That is, when my boss allows me to just share what's on my mind and maybe be a little bit non-productive about it for a couple of minutes, just to allow me to sort through my thoughts in the open to help me figure out what the next step is. It's essentially like rubber ducking when you're coding. Sometimes you just need to have a rubber duck to talk to, and your manager is one of the few rubber ducks where you can be transparent about most things without having to worry about if you're saying something that you shouldn't be saying, if you're sharing sensitive information, what have you. It's a room where if the psychological safety is there, you can just vent. I have found though that it's important to set that expectation with your boss, that if you want to use your one-on-one for that you're going to do that, and that's okay with them. And also I found it's useful to set that expectation back to point 2 at the point of each topic. Is this a topic where you're looking for them to help you, or do you just want to, share your emotions and share what the heck is going on and just have them listen for a little bit and tell you you're not insane for the way you're reacting? Make sure that is set up front, because otherwise you might run into situations where your boss thinks you're looking for a certain amount of advice where you actually aren't. You just need to blow off some steam to be able to continue doing what you're doing. My final tip is to have an agenda document, and if your manager doesn't provide one for you, then you need to make one. And as I shared in my first tip, it allows you to collect topics over the week and filter and sort so that you can have a potentially pre-read for your manager, or you can have your thoughts at least in a structured way. And finally, it allows you to have a look back after a while. If you've had the same manager for a year and you've had weekly one-on-ones, then you will have 50 weeks of topics that you've talked about. And this can be extremely useful for things like your performance review, your development talks, or just in reflecting for yourself about how far you've come over the last year. If you can go back and say, oh, that was the problem we had a year ago, that seems so silly now. Now we're working on much more complicated and useful things than the struggles we had back then. So I think that's really it. One-on-ones are incredibly important tools, and there's many philosophical reasons we could get into beyond what we've shared. There's many specific tactics that we might get into in the future. But I really just wanted to share quickly how I use them tactically to get my job done, both as a manager and as a team member. And I hope this has been useful for you. And if it has, please leave me a comment with your best topics or best ways of running a one-on-one. And I'd love to hear what you do. Thank you so much.